Hi, and welcome back. Today, I'm going to show you my sea glass lampshade that I made for my nice base that I did on my last video. So I would start off with a lampshade, a metal lampshade that you can find various lampshade shapes at used stores, and I got this at Goodwill, and then you take off the fabric that's on it, and then because you want the solder to actually stick to the metal, I cover the metal part with 7/32 inch black backed foil. I use my black backed usually because it sticks really, really well. And you want to have foil that sticks well. And then your solder, as you can see, sticks to it really quickly and fast. And you don't even have to pre-tin it most of the time. It'll just take the solder really well. And right now I am soldering my sea glass pieces wherever they seem to fit into the frame. Now I'm just doing every other rib of this particular frame. It really depends on what kind of lampshade you can find, what your design will be. Sometimes you can get like ribs that are like a lot thinner than this, and sometimes you can find them with only symmetrical ones. So whatever you find, you can make work. Now I took glass that I had already tumbled. So I bought what's called sea glass at actually I got these at Amazon, and I'll put the information on what I used in the description page. But most of the sea glass you buy at no matter where you get it is not really sea glass. It's like glass that they have chipped into smaller pieces. But the good thing about the sea glass is that you will find that it's different thicknesses and it has some variation to it and looks really fun in these projects. I also tumble it some more, like usually for like 4 days on a kind of high tumble, but not with a lot of grit or anything. Maybe with just those little ceramic tubes that you can get to help tumble stuff. And I tumble it for like 4 days, and that smooths it all out. So it's a lot smoother than when you originally buy it. So basically, you end up with different shapes that are nice and smooth on the edges, but are still varied. They're not like completely flat. I also tumble some scraps of flat glass that I happen to have. And those are very handy to scatter here and there. For one thing, because there's just scraps, they're free because, you have all these scraps left over when you make other projects. And also, it's a nice variation between your sea glass that you bought, and you can chip them into smaller pieces as needed to fill little teeny places, and they kind of blend with the sea glass, and you won't even notice that some of them aren't actually varied in their thickness. So that's what I start with, and I foil all these. And obviously, when I foiled them, I used, for the most part, my 7/32 inch black backed foil that I have cut in half lengthwise so that they didn't really cover the glass very much. Some of the really thick pieces, I might actually use the full thickness of the 7/32 inch black backed foil, but for the most part, I only put a half width, and I wrap my glass in the foil, and then of course burnish it over smooth. Right now I'm doing the inside, like backing, putting solder on the back side. You don't really have to do this, but it adds strength, and I find that I feel better knowing that it's attached as well as possible. So that's why I solder the back. And right now I'm using some scraps with my tweezers. So I don't like to waste anything. I don't want to waste solder, and I don't want to waste the glass. Um, so I use all the little blobs and everything. So if there's gaps between the pieces of glass, you can either fill them with solder or you can cut smaller pieces of glass to fill those little spaces. So that's up to you, and it really depends on how big a space is. And if you foil a lot of glass, you will find that it's kind of like a puzzle. You can kind of find pieces that fit very nicely into the spaces, and you won't really have a lot of big gaps. So as you can see, I'm trying to like tack that in place, and that particular piece kind of was squarish on the left side there, so the gap wasn't really very big. And yeah, I'm foiling, I'm tinning the outside of that particular area before I put my next one in. And that makes it a little bit easier to solder the next one in, but you don't have to pre-tin anything if you don't want to. Keep going back and forth, adding solder where needed, and then finding a piece to fill the gap that you have. I usually work on all four sides. Like this one actually has four different areas I'm putting these sea glass into. And then I pick up a piece that looks like a great piece to put in my project and then try to find a place to put it. So yeah, that's why it's good to have a whole bunch at your disposal when you start a project like this, so you can go back and forth and find the correct piece of glass for the space available. I'm wearing silicone gloves right now, and that's because the silicone gloves, you can use them again and again. That's why they get kind of yellowy, because I've used them a lot. And they help dissipate the heat. So if you're holding a piece of solder or a piece of glass, you won't get burned as quickly, and then you have that little bit of time before you have to let go of your project before it gets too hot. So that's very handy. Oops, that piece fell out. Let's put it back in. So yeah, I tack it in place and then add solder. And you will notice that when you add solder, don't heat up the same area and try to finish one area really quickly, because you'll heat up that too much and it'll pop out because it'll release, all the solder will get hot. So it's better to tack it in and then come back to it a little bit later and add more solder. Now I'm using a variety of colors. I wanted this to kind of go with that base that I did earlier. So that's why I'm using the colors I have right here. So I'm using like different kinds of yellows. I have off-white and kind of yellow and an orangish, and then into a red. And then I also have some greens and I have some blues. So yeah, I guess I have a lot of colors. So this is the time that I am adding textured glass. So I need to have pieces that fit in this glass frame I have, but because the frame itself is not straight on the edges, I have to have my pieces, a few different pieces. So I'm using 2 or 3 pieces to fill, because it has that bend, kind of a sweep to the frame. So I can't go straight with one because it's not straight. And you can even see with that one, you have that slight gap because the frame itself is curved, and of course the flat glass is not. So, you can only go so big before you have to add another piece of glass. I've decided right there that the gap really wasn't very big, and I can just add solder right there. And because I have so much solder added to the stained glass between the sea glass, that little bit of extra solder added here won't look odd, because I have large hunks of solder in the sea glass areas. So it all kind of blends together. Now I'm using a piece of paper to help make a template for spaces that I need to fill. So that's how I got those other shapes too. I used a piece of paper, put it in there, and got my pattern. So you can't really pre-do like you can for some stained glass work. You can have it all lined up perfectly before you start working. Well, with something like this, you really can't, because you kind of have to go do it as you go. So that's why I'm using a pattern. So each piece that I still need to do will be, I'll have to like adjust a pattern to make sure it fits. And you might have to use your grinder to make it fit perfectly. And as you can see, I still have a little gap right there because it didn't cut perfectly, but um, they fit pretty good. And I use different textured glass because I kind of wanted to go with the look that I have with the sea glass being kind of cloudy and a little bit textured. So I use clear glass that is all different textures. So this is kind of a variety because my sea glass is a variety. So I wanted the glass on my flat areas to be a variety. Of course, I could have done the whole thing in sea glass, but I thought that might be a little bit overwhelming. So, and I already have that base that I have all that sea glass in, and that's like really kind of an eye catcher to begin with, and I didn't want to distract from the base. I didn't want the shade to take over the wonderful base that I made. So right now I am filling the gaps, and you'll notice like that line thing at the top, that lined glass is a very thick glass. So some of your textured glasses will be different thicknesses than others. And if this bothers you, then you will have to look at all your textured glass and make sure they're all the same thicknesses before you do a project. For this project, it didn't really bother me that some of them were thicker than others because, like most of my projects, my solder is not like really smooth. It's all kind of three-dimensional, and I'm not really worried about the smoothness of my solder at this point. So it's okay that there's different thicknesses, and because I'm also doing it on a curve, I have, different they're kind of like curving, so they're not lining up perfectly anyway. So it would be very difficult to get perfect smooth lines when you're working on a curve. So right now I am filling all those areas up, and that really looked nice. I'm also going back and I am working on the inside and reinforcing all those seams with solder. I have at times when I think the seams are not going to be very strong, even doing it this way, I have added wire actually between the glass. So I'm making it kind of like you can't see the wire, but I'm putting wire between the glass, and that helps support it. But because this was a wire framed lampshade to begin with, it's pretty darn sturdy. I don't really have to worry about that. If it was one of those lampshades that you make where you make all the pieces of glass and then you just put them all together to form the lampshade's shape, you might need to add wire here and there to help support it. Just, I like to know that it's not going to fall apart. Okay, so this is outside. I showed you a picture of how pretty it was, and right now you can see that the copper patina is really changing the color of the silver solder. It's very pretty. I'm using a spray because being that it's three-dimensional, it's difficult to get it spread on even with a toothbrush. Well, thanks for watching and have fun creating, and I think this came out really pretty. I use color changing lights for the light bulb so that I could change the color as I wanted. Bye-bye.